I discovered the theft on a Tuesday morning in June when I found my well pump bone dry and the pressure gauge reading 0 for the first time in 15 years. My name is Grant Richardson, and I had lived on my 12-acre property in rural Prescott Valley, Arizona, for nearly 2 decades. The land came with an old but functional well that had been drilled back in 1987, producing clean, cold water that had never once failed me. My nearest neighbors were half a mile down the dirt road, and I liked it that way. No noise, no drama, just me, my workshop, and enough space to breathe. Then the Sonora Ridge Estates development broke ground 3 years ago on the adjacent property, and everything changed. The development sprawled across what used to be open desert, transforming it into a cookie-cutter neighborhood of stucco houses with manicured lawns that made absolutely no sense in the Arizona heat. The homeowners association that ran the place was called the Sonora Ridge HOA, and they had their fingers in everything. I had watched them fine residents for having the wrong shade of beige on their mailboxes and threaten legal action over basketball hoops in driveways. My property sat just outside their jurisdiction, thank God, but I shared a property line with their community park and pool area. That Tuesday morning, I had gone to water my vegetable garden and workshop. I turned the spigot and got nothing but a sad wheeze and a few drops. My first thought was pump failure, which would have been expensive but manageable. I walked over to the well house, a small shed that protected the pump equipment, and checked everything. The pump was running, straining actually, but producing nothing. The water table could not have dropped that dramatically overnight. Something else was wrong. I grabbed my toolkit and started tracing the water line from the well head across my property. Everything looked normal until I reached the western fence line, the one I shared with Sonora Ridge Estates. There, partially hidden by desert brush, I found a brand new PVC pipe connection spliced directly into my main water line. Someone had literally tapped into my well, running a 2-inch pipe under the chain-link fence toward the development. My blood pressure spiked immediately. I followed the pipe on their side of the fence, which was not difficult since whoever installed it had not bothered to bury it very deep. The white PVC was visible in several places, snaking through the desert scrub toward the community pool area. I walked along the fence line until I had a clear view of the pool. It was massive, easily Olympic-sized, surrounded by new concrete decking and fancy lounge chairs. Water sparkled in the morning sun, and I could see the pool was completely full of my water. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The illegal connection, the pipe running across the property line, the pool itself. Then I marched straight to the HOA office, which was located in a small building near the development entrance. A woman in her mid-50s sat behind the desk, her blonde hair styled in that particular way that screamed she wanted to speak to managers on a daily basis. Her name tag read Karen Donovan, HOA president. Of course her name was Karen. "Can I help you?" she asked, barely glancing up from her computer. "Yeah, you can explain why there is a pipe from your pool connected to my well," I said, keeping my voice level but firm. Karen looked up then, her expression shifting from disinterest to mild annoyance. "Excuse me, my well." "The one on my property. Someone tapped into it and ran a line to your community pool. That is theft of water and property damage." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I am sure you are mistaken. Our pool has its own water source." "Really? Then you would not mind if I called the county water department and had them come check it out?" Karen's jaw tightened. "Mr. Richardson, Grant Richardson, I own the property on the western border." "Mr. Richardson, I will look into this, but I assure you that Sonora Ridge Estates follows all applicable laws and regulations. Then you will have no problem disconnecting that pipe by the end of the day. I said I will look into it. Now, if you do not mind, I have work to do. I left the office angrier than when I had entered. Karen's dismissive attitude made it clear she had no intention of doing anything quickly. I drove into town and went straight to the Yavapai County Sheriff's office. The deputy who took my report was sympathetic, but explained that water theft was tricky. It was technically a civil matter unless I could prove criminal intent, which meant lawyers and court dates. Best thing you can do is document everything and get a lawyer involved, Deputy Martinez told me. If they do not disconnect voluntarily, you can sue for damages and get an injunction. How long does that take? Months, usually. Maybe longer depending on the court calendar. I thanked him and left, my mind already working on alternatives. I was not the type to sit around waiting for lawyers to sort things out while my well ran dry. That water was mine, paid for when I bought the property, maintained by me, and entirely on my land. The HOA had no right to it, period. Back home, I did some research. Arizona water law was complex, but the basics were clear. Groundwater belonged to the landowner who owned the land above it. My well, my water. The HOA had committed theft, plain and simple. I called a lawyer anyway, a guy named Robert Chen who specialized in property disputes. He agreed to take the case but confirmed what the deputy had said. Getting a court order could take months, and in the meantime, the HOA could keep draining my well. The system moves slowly, Grant, Robert explained over the phone, but we can send them a cease and desist letter immediately. That puts them on notice and strengthens your case. Send it, I said. 3 days later, Robert called to tell me the letter had been delivered. 2 days after that, I checked the connection point on my property. The pipe was still there, still drawing water. I tested my well pressure again. Still low. The HOA was ignoring the cease and desist completely. That night, I sat in my workshop and thought about my options. I could wait for the legal system, but that would take months and cost thousands in legal fees. Meanwhile, my garden was dying, and I was having to haul water from town just to have enough for daily use. The principle of it burned in my gut. These people had stolen from me, been caught, been legally notified to stop, and they just kept right on doing it. So I decided to cap the well. Arizona summer was just getting started. June in Prescott Valley was hot, but July and August would be brutal. If the HOA wanted to run a community pool in the desert, they could pay for their own water. I was done being their free water supply. The next morning, I drove to a plumbing supply store in Prescott and bought what I needed. A heavy-duty gate valve, pipe cutters, PVC cement, and a locking wellhead cap. Back home, I shut down the well pump and went to work. First, I cut out the illegal connection point entirely, removing their splice and about 3 feet of pipe on either side. Then I properly repaired my main line with new PVC and fittings, making sure everything was sealed tight. Finally, I installed the gate valve right at the wellhead, inside the locked well house, giving me complete control over the water flow. I tested everything, watching the pressure gauge climb back to normal for the first time in a week. My spigots ran strong and clear. Everything on my property worked perfectly. On their side of the fence, that pipe they had installed was now completely disconnected and useless. I gave it 2 days. On Saturday morning, I was in my workshop when I heard someone pounding on my front door. I took my time walking over, already knowing who it would be. Through the window, I could see Karen Donovan standing on my porch, her face red and her expression furious. I opened the door. "Can I help you? You cut off our water," she shouted. I removed an illegal connection from my property. Not quite the same thing. That pool serves over 300 families. Children use that pool. Then maybe the HOA should have installed a legal water source instead of stealing mine. Karen's hands were clenched into fists at her sides. We had an agreement with the previous landowner. He let us use the well. I am not the previous landowner, and I never agreed to anything. Even if he did agree, which I doubt, that agreement does not transfer with property ownership unless it is in writing and recorded with the deed, which it is not. This is completely unreasonable. That pool needs water. Then buy some. Call the city and get a water connection. Drill your own well. I do not care, but you are not using mine. Do you have any idea how much that costs? I crossed my arms. About as much as I am spending on lawyers because you stole my water. Funny how that works. Karen's face had gone from red to purple. The HOA will sue you for damages, for loss of amenity value to our residents. Good luck with that. You stole from me, Karen. I have pictures, I have a police report, and I have a lawyer. You are welcome to explain to a judge why you think you are entitled to water from someone else's property without permission or compensation. This is not over, she snapped, turning on her heel and storming back to her car. I closed the door and went back to my workshop, feeling better than I had in weeks. The next few days were quiet, which should have been my first warning. I knew Karen was not the type to give up easily. Sure enough, the following Wednesday, I received a notice from the Yavapai County Code Enforcement Office. Someone had filed a complaint claiming my property was in violation of county water waste regulations. The complaint alleged I was hoarding water resources and preventing reasonable shared use of groundwater. It was complete nonsense, of course, but it required a response. I called Robert Chen, who assured me it was a nuisance filing and would go nowhere. They are trying to pressure you, Robert said. It is a common tactic. File bogus complaints, make your life difficult, hope you give in. Just respond with the facts and ignore the rest. I did exactly that, sending a detailed response to code enforcement explaining the situation and including all my documentation. The county investigator who came out to inspect was professional and thorough. He took one look at the situation, reviewed my paperwork, and closed the complaint as unfounded. For what it is worth, the investigator told me, you are completely in the right here. That HOA had no business tapping your well. If they try to file another complaint, let me know. Harassment through false code enforcement reports is taken seriously. I thanked him and thought that might be the end of it. It was not. 2 weeks into July, with temperatures regularly hitting 100 degrees, the HOA pool sat empty. I could see it from my property line, a giant concrete hole reflecting the harsh sun. The neighborhood kids who had been swimming there every day were now out of luck. I felt a little bad about that, but not enough to change my mind. Those kids' parents paid HOA dues every month. They could demand their HOA board actually solve the problem legally instead of through theft. Karen tried a different approach. She showed up at my door again, this time with 2 other board members, both men in their 40s who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. Mr. Richardson, we would like to discuss a compromise, Karen began, her tone artificially sweet. I am listening. We would like to offer you free pool access in exchange for allowing us to continue using your well for the community pool. I almost laughed. You want me to let you steal my water in exchange for the privilege of using the pool you are filling with my water? One of the men, whose name tag read Brad, cleared his throat. We could also offer a modest compensation, say $50 per month, $50. Do you have any idea how much water an Olympic-sized pool uses? Especially in this heat with evaporation. We are working with a limited budget, Karen interjected. That is not my problem. You built amenities you cannot afford to operate. That is poor planning on your part." "What would it take?" Brad asked, sounding genuinely curious. "What compensation would you consider fair?" I thought about it for a moment. "First, a full apology and admission that you illegally tapped my well. Second, reimbursement for all my legal fees and the cost to repair the damage to my property. Third, an ongoing payment of $500 per month for water usage, plus the cost to install proper metering so we know exactly how much you are using. And fourth, a written contract reviewed by my lawyer." Karen's fake smile vanished. $500 a month is highway robbery. "No, what you did was robbery. What I am offering is a business arrangement. Take it or leave it." "We will leave it," Karen snapped. "Come on, gentlemen." Mr. Richardson clearly does not care about being a good neighbor. They left, and I went back inside, knowing this was far from over. July turned into August, and the heat became oppressive. My well was performing perfectly now, with no mysterious pressure drops or pump strain. My garden thrived. I even filled a small stock tank I had been meaning to set up for the local wildlife. Meanwhile, complaints about the empty pool were apparently flooding the HOA board meetings. I knew this because one of the residents, a guy named Tom who lived on the edge of the development, stopped by to thank me. "Most of us had no idea they were stealing your water," Tom explained. He was a decent guy, maybe 35, who worked from home and had seen me around town. When it came out at the last board meeting, a lot of people were furious. Karen tried to spin it like you were the bad guy, but it did not work. We pay dues for that pool, and finding out the board was too cheap to do it legally really ticked people off. So, what is Karen saying now? That she is exploring legal options and alternative water sources. But between you and me, there are not many alternatives. Connecting to city water would cost a fortune because of how far out we are. Drilling a new well is expensive and not guaranteed to produce water. She painted herself into a corner. Tom's information proved accurate. Another week passed, and I noticed work crews at the pool site. They were installing a water tank system, large plastic tanks on a concrete pad. A water truck pulled up the next day, beginning the process of filling the pool through the temporary system. I did some quick math. At current water delivery prices, they were probably paying 3 to 4 times what my offer would have cost them. Pride was an expensive thing. The pool reopened in mid-August, and I figured that would be the end of the drama. I was wrong. On August 20th, I woke up to find someone had vandalized my property. My mailbox was smashed, paint was thrown across my workshop door, and someone had tried to damage my well house, though the lock had held. I called the sheriff's department immediately. Deputy Martinez came out and took a report, but without cameras or witnesses, there was not much to go on. "You think it was someone from the HOA?" he asked. "Who else would it be? I do not have problems with anyone else. Problem is proving it. You might want to invest in some security cameras." I took his advice and spent the next 2 days installing a comprehensive camera system. Motion-activated, night vision, the works. 4 cameras covering all approaches to my property, with footage uploading to cloud storage. If someone came back, I would know exactly who it was. They came back on August 25th. At 2:30 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I pulled up the camera feed and watched as 2 figures approached my well house. They were dressed in dark clothes with hoods up, and they were carrying tools. I grabbed my own phone, called 911, and then watched as they attempted to break the lock on the well house. The lock held, but they were persistent, eventually producing bolt cutters. Sheriff's deputies arrived 8 minutes later, which felt like an eternity. The 2 figures tried to run but did not make it far. Deputies Martinez and Chen tackled them both in my driveway. When they pulled back the hoods, I was not surprised to see I did not recognize either of them. They were young, maybe early 20s. "You want to tell me what you are doing?" Martinez asked them. Neither spoke until they were separated. The younger one, a skinny kid with bad acne, cracked first. "Karen paid us $500 each to mess with the well," he admitted. "Said we should make it so the guy could not use it or something. I do not know, man, we were just supposed to break stuff." Martinez looked at me. "You are going to want to press charges." "Absolutely." The two vandals were arrested for criminal trespassing and attempted property damage. More importantly, their confession gave the sheriff's department probable cause to investigate Karen Donovan. When Martinez and his partner showed up at her house the next morning, Karen apparently lost her mind, ranting about how I had ruined everything and someone needed to teach me a lesson. She was arrested for criminal solicitation and conspiracy to commit property damage. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove her as president. Brad, the board member who had come with her to make the compensation offer, took over as interim president. Brad called me 2 days later. "Mr. Richardson, I want to apologize on behalf of the HOA for everything that has happened," he said, his voice sincere. "What Karen did was illegal and wrong. The board had no knowledge of the vandalism or her hiring those men. We are taking full responsibility for the illegal water connection, and we would like to make this right." "I appreciate that, Brad. What did you have in mind?" "We would like to accept your original offer. $500 per month, metering, contract, everything. We will also reimburse your legal fees and repair costs in full. And the apology. I will write a formal letter on behalf of the board acknowledging everything. We will also publish a notice to all residents explaining the situation and making it clear that the fault was entirely with the previous board's actions." I thought about it. "All right. Have your lawyer contact mine and we will work out the details. Thank you, Grant. And again, I am truly sorry about all of this." We finalized the agreement in early September. The contract was airtight, drafted by both our lawyers, and included provisions for annual cost of living increases and regular meter readings. The HOA paid my legal fees, which had climbed to nearly $8,000, plus another $2,000 for repairs, and the security system. The formal apology was published in the HOA newsletter and posted on their community board. Karen's legal troubles were just beginning. The criminal charges stuck, and she ended up pleading guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation, community service, and restitution. The two men she hired received similar deals. More significantly, several residents filed a civil lawsuit against Karen personally for misuse of HOA funds and breach of fiduciary duty. The scandal effectively ended her reign as HOA president and her reputation in the community. In October, I supervised the installation of a proper metered connection to my well. The HOA paid for everything: the equipment, the installation, the inspection, all of it. The new system allowed them to draw water for the pool while automatically tracking usage. Every month, I received a detailed report and a check for $500, plus any overage based on actual consumption. The pool remained operational through the fall, though usage dropped off as temperatures cooled. In November, Brad stopped by with a bottle of whiskey and a handshake. "I wanted to thank you for being reasonable once we cleaned house," he said. "A lot of residents are grateful we could work something out. I am not trying to be anyone's enemy, Brad. I just was not going to let someone steal from me. Completely understandable." For what it is worth, Karen's gone from the community entirely. She sold her house and moved out of state. Good riddance. We shared a drink on my porch, watching the sun set over the desert. The neighborhood was quiet, the pool area empty in the evening light. It was not the same peace I had before the development went in, but it was close enough. December brought cooler weather, and the first hints that the HOA was actually learning to function properly under new leadership. Brad and the board instituted new transparency measures, required multiple approvals for any expenditure over $1,000, and brought in an independent auditor to review the association's finances. Turned out Karen had been playing fast and loose with the budget for years, which explained why she had resorted to stealing water instead of paying for it legally. I received a Christmas card from several families in the development, thanking me for holding the line and forcing the board to clean up its act. That was unexpected but appreciated. Tom became something of a regular visitor, stopping by occasionally to talk about property maintenance and desert living. He was considering buying land outside the HOA's jurisdiction for himself. Watching this whole thing play out taught me that HOAs are not worth the hassle, Tom said one afternoon while we were working on my truck. Sure, the neighborhood looks nice, but is it worth giving up control of your own property? I do not think so. Some people like the structure, I said. Not for me, but I get it. Yeah, well, structure is one thing. What Karen was doing was dictatorship. I am glad you did not back down. Winter passed quietly. The pool sat unused, covered with a tarp for the season. My well ran strong and steady, with the meter showing reasonable usage from the HOA during their monthly maintenance cycles. The $500 checks arrived like clockwork, and I invested most of it into improving my property. New fencing, better irrigation for the garden, and a proper gravel driveway to replace the dirt track I had been using for years. Spring arrived in March, and with it came preparations for the pool to reopen. Brad called to give me a heads up that water usage would increase once they filled and began regular operations. Everything was by the book, just as we had agreed. We also wanted to invite you to the opening day event, Brad said. It is open to all residents and neighbors. Figured you might want to see what your water is helping maintain. I surprised myself by accepting. On the first Saturday in April, I walked over to the pool area for the first time since the whole mess began. The place was transformed. New shade structures, fresh landscaping, and a family-friendly atmosphere that felt genuinely welcoming. Kids splashed in the water while parents relaxed in lounge chairs. A few people recognized me and waved. One mother came over to thank me personally. "My kids love this pool," she said. When we found out the old board was stealing water for it, I was mortified. Thank you for making them do it the right way. I did not stay long, but it felt good to see the amenity being used properly and legally. This was how it should have been from the start. The HOA providing services to their residents through legitimate means, not theft and shortcuts. May rolled around, and with it came the 1-year anniversary of discovering the illegal connection. A lot had changed in 12 months. Karen was gone. The HOA was operating transparently under new leadership, and I had a steady supplemental income from the water agreement. More importantly, I had defended my property rights and set a clear boundary. Nobody was going to take advantage of me or my land. Deputy Martinez stopped by one afternoon with an update I had not expected. "Thought you would want to know. Karen Donovan was arrested in Nevada last month," he said. "Turns out she joined another HOA board and was up to her old tricks, financial fraud this time. She is looking at actual prison time now, not just probation." "Some people never learn," I said. "Nope, but at least she is not your problem anymore." That night, I sat on my porch with a cold beer, looking out at my property. The garden was thriving, the well was strong, and everything was exactly as it should be. The sound of kids playing at the pool drifted across the evening air, a reminder that even in conflict, things could work out right when people acted honestly and followed the law. The whole experience had taught me something valuable about standing your ground. It would have been easier to just let the HOA keep using my water. It would have avoided conflict, legal fees, and months of stress. But easy is not always right. They had stolen from me, plain and simple, and letting it slide would have only encouraged more of the same behavior. By capping that well and forcing them to face consequences, I had not just protected my own rights, but also pushed the entire HOA toward better governance. Tom stopped by in late May with news of his own. He had bought 20 acres about 3 miles down the road and was planning to build a house completely outside any HOA jurisdiction. Going to drill my own well, set up solar, the whole independent setup, he said excitedly. After watching what you went through, I realized I wanted complete control over my own property. Good man. Let me know if you need any help or advice on the well drilling. Definitely will. Hey, I am having a barbecue at my current place next weekend before I list it for sale. You should come. Few of the neighbors who were on your side through all the drama will be there. I agreed, and the following Saturday found myself at a backyard barbecue in the heart of Sonora Ridge Estates. It was surreal being inside the development as a guest after everything that had happened. But the people there were genuine and friendly, making it clear they had never supported Karen's tactics. Most of us moved here for affordable housing, not because we love HOAs, one resident named Michelle explained. When Karen started abusing her power, a lot of us wanted to fight back but did not know how. You showed us it was possible. The current HOA board, under Brad's leadership, had implemented significant reforms. Meetings were now recorded and minutes published online. Any contract over $5,000 required resident approval at a general meeting. And most importantly, they had hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations, removing the possibility of another Karen-style autocrat taking over. We are trying to be the kind of HOA that people do not hate, Brad told me at the barbecue. Maintain property values, keep common areas nice, but stay out of people's business otherwise. Novel concept, right? June arrived with rising temperatures and the pool entering its busiest season. The meter on my well tracked the increased usage, and my monthly checks reflected the higher consumption. Everything was working exactly as designed. The HOA had their pool, I had fair compensation, and the system was transparent and legal. I received a call from Robert Chen, my lawyer, in mid-June. Grant, I wanted to let you know that the civil suit against Karen was settled. She is paying out a significant sum to the HOA and affected residents. Thought you might want to know your case set a precedent that helped their legal team. Good. She cost a lot of people a lot of money and stress. She did. But the good news is the HOA is on solid footing now. Your water agreement is one of their most straightforward contracts, actually. Everything else is a mess of old deals and unclear terms. They are using yours as a template for cleaning up the rest. That made me smile. Something positive coming from the whole mess. July brought peak heat and peak pool usage. Kids were out of school and the pool was packed almost daily. My well handled the demand without issue, a testament to the aquifer below and the quality of the original drilling. The $500 base payment plus usage overages meant I was clearing close to $700 per month during summer. Not a fortune, but decent supplemental income for water that was just sitting in the ground otherwise. I invested some of the money into a rainwater catchment system, a smart move in the desert. Large tanks connected to my workshop and house gutters would capture the monsoon rains and give me an additional water source for the garden and livestock if I ever decided to expand. It felt good to be improving the property with money the HOA was paying me for what they had tried to steal. August marked the anniversary of Karen's arrest. Brad sent me a message asking if I wanted to be recognized at the annual HOA meeting for helping push necessary reforms. I politely declined. I did not need recognition or attention. I had simply defended what was mine and forced people to follow the law. That should be normal behavior, not something requiring awards. September brought cooler temperatures and the first hints of fall. Pool usage dropped off as kids returned to school and families shifted to indoor activities. My monthly statements reflected the decrease, which was expected and accounted for in the contract. The system was working exactly as it should. Tom broke ground on his new property in October, and I spent a weekend helping him mark locations for the well and septic system. Watching someone else embrace the independence of rural living felt satisfying. He had learned from my experience that HOAs were not worth the trade-off, even with their promised amenities. "You know what I realized?" Tom said while we were surveying his land. "That pool probably gets used seriously by like 20% of the residents. But everyone pays for it through their dues. I would rather just get a gym membership or drive to the lake when I want to swim. At least then I am only paying for what I use. Makes sense to me. But some people really value that community aspect." "Sure, but you can have community without an HOA breathing down your neck about paint colors and grass height." He had a point. November brought the pool closure for winter and the annual contract review. Brad and I met at a coffee shop in Prescott to go over the numbers and discuss any needed adjustments. Everything was in order, and we agreed to a modest cost of living increase in the monthly base rate, bringing it to $525 starting in January. "I have to say, this has been the smoothest vendor relationship the HOA has," Brad said. "Clear terms, reliable service, no drama. Why cannot everything be this simple?" Because most people do not bother writing things down properly. And some people, like Karen, actively try to cheat the system. Truth. "Hey, we are planning some upgrades to the pool area next spring. Nothing that should affect water usage significantly, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Appreciate it. Just keep me in the loop if anything changes that might impact the well." We shook hands and parted ways, two neighbors who had found a functional working relationship despite the rocky start. December was quiet. The holidays came and went, and I spent Christmas Day on my porch, enjoying the peace and solitude of my property. The development next door was quiet, most residents inside with family. It was easy to forget sometimes that hundreds of people lived just beyond my fence line. That was the beauty of proper boundaries and mutual respect. The new year began with January of the following year, and with it came a moment of reflection. 20 months had passed since I discovered the illegal connection. In that time, an entire HOA board had been replaced, criminal charges had been filed and resolved, reforms had been implemented, and a fair business arrangement had been established. It was a textbook example of what happened when someone refused to be victimized and instead stood their ground. Deputy Martinez stopped by in late January with surprising news. "You started something of a movement," he said with a grin. "We have had 3 other property owners in the county come forward with similar complaints about HOAs or neighbors stealing water or power. Everyone references your case. You are like the patron saint of property rights now. I just did not want anyone stealing from me." "Yeah, but you followed through. Most people complain and then give up when it gets hard. You pushed all the way through the system, documented everything, and forced accountability. That matters. It was nice to know the hassle had set a positive precedent, even if I had not intended to become some kind of activist. February brought the first preparations for the pool's spring reopening. The HOA hired a new pool maintenance company, and they contacted me directly to discuss the water fill schedule. Professional, courteous, and efficient. Another sign that the organization had matured significantly since Karen's departure. March saw the pool reopen right on schedule. Water usage ticked up, my monthly payments increased accordingly, and everything functioned smoothly. I occasionally walked the fence line just to make sure no one was getting any bright ideas about additional unauthorized connections, but everything remained secure and properly metered. April marked 2 full years since the original discovery. The saga that had consumed so much energy and attention was now just routine business. Monthly statements, monthly payments, occasional communication with Brad or the management company. Boring, predictable, and exactly how it should be. I ran into Michelle, the woman from Tom's Barbecue, at the grocery store in Prescott Valley. She was with her 2 kids, both of whom were excited about the pool reopening. "Mr. Richardson," she called out, "I wanted you to know the HOA finally posted financial statements online. Transparent budgets, expense reports, everything. It is like a completely different organization than 2 years ago." "That is great to hear. Brad and the new board seem to be doing it right." "They really are. And I think a lot of it came from your situation forcing everyone to take accountability seriously. So thank you, genuinely." Her kids tugged her toward the cereal aisle, and we parted with waves. It felt good knowing that standing up for my rights had cascading positive effects beyond just my own situation. May brought Tom's housewarming party at his new property. The house was not finished yet, but the well was drilled, the septic was in, and he had a livable trailer on site while construction continued. About a dozen people showed up, most of them refugees from various HOA developments who had decided to go independent. "To property rights and personal freedom," Tom toasted, raising a beer. Everyone cheered and drank. It was a good crowd, people who valued self-reliance and did not want anyone telling them what color their front door could be. June arrived with the familiar pattern of increased pool usage and increased revenue. The system hummed along efficiently. I had long since recouped my legal fees and repair costs from the monthly payments. Now it was pure profit, money I was investing back into the property and banking for future needs. The monsoon season started in July, and my new rainwater catchment system proved its worth. The large storage tanks filled rapidly during the heavy thunderstorms, giving me thousands of gallons of free water for the garden. Combined with the well income, my water situation was the best it had ever been. August brought news that Karen had been sentenced to 18 months in a Nevada state prison for her financial fraud charges. Deputy Martinez shared the information with a certain satisfaction. "She tried to represent herself and made a complete mess of it," he explained. Judge was not amused. Between the probation violation from the Arizona case and the new charges, she is looking at serious time. Good. Maybe she will learn something. Doubtful, but at least she is not scamming any more HOAs for a while. September rolled around with the familiar seasonal shift. Pool usage declined, kids were back in school, and the Arizona heat began to moderate. My routine was well established now. Check the meter readings monthly, review the usage reports, deposit the checks, maintain my property. Simple, predictable, drama-free. October brought an unexpected request from Brad. The HOA wanted to feature the water agreement in a national HOA management magazine as an example of successful conflict resolution and vendor relationships. They would not use my full name without permission, but they thought the case study could help other communities. "I think it is a good idea," I told Brad. "If it helps other people avoid the mess we went through, I am all for it. You can use my full name. I've got nothing to hide." The article ran in November, and I received a copy in the mail. It was fair and accurate, detailing the illegal connection, the conflict, Karen's criminal behavior, and the eventual resolution through proper contracting and accountability. My lawyer, Robert Chen, was quoted extensively about property rights and the importance of legal agreements. Several other HOA lawyers and property rights advocates praised the outcome as a model for how these situations should be handled. December brought the close of another year and another successful cycle of the water agreement. The pool closed for winter, usage dropped to minimal maintenance levels, and everything remained stable and professional. I received a holiday card from the HOA board thanking me for being a reliable partner and wishing me well for the new year. As I sat on my porch on New Year's Eve, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and gold, I reflected on how far things had come. 3 years ago, I had been furious and violated by the discovery of theft on my property. Now, I had a steady supplemental income, a professionally managed business relationship, and the satisfaction of knowing I had stood my ground and won. The well pump hummed quietly in its housing, doing exactly what it had been designed to do: provide clean, reliable water. The difference now was that everyone using that water was doing so legally, with fair compensation and proper documentation. No theft, no shortcuts, no Karen-style autocracy. Just honest business between neighbors who had learned, sometimes the hard way, that respecting property rights and following the law was not just the right thing to do but also the smart thing to do. The kids in Sonora Ridge Estates would have their pool again next summer. The residents would pay their dues, and those dues would include fair compensation for the water they used. The HOA board would continue operating transparently, having learned that accountability mattered. And I would continue maintaining my property, secure in the knowledge that I had drawn clear boundaries and defended them successfully. Sometimes standing your ground meant conflict. It meant lawyers and police reports and months of stress. But the alternative, allowing people to take advantage and steal what was yours, was far worse. I had chosen the hard path, and it had led to a resolution that benefited everyone who was willing to play fair. The desert night settled in, stars emerging in the vast Arizona sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. My land, my well, my rules. It had always been that simple, even when others tried to make it complicated. I finished my beer, stood up, and headed inside. Another year was beginning, and with it would come the familiar rhythms of desert life. The heat, the monsoons, the pool opening and closing, the monthly statements and payments. All of it legal, documented, and fair, exactly as it should be.